All right, strap in, everyone. We're going deep today into the world of crypto regulation. And this one is really something. We're talking about BitMEX,
Oh, yeah.
the crypto derivatives platform, you know them. They got hit with a massive $100 million fine. What did they do? It's a big question.
Right. That's a lot of money,
That is a lot of money.
especially considering they're not even based in the U.S.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, what gives?
Yeah. It's a head-scratcher. BitMEX is actually incorporated in Seychelles. You know Seychelles?
Yeah.
They have a bit of a reputation
Okay.
for being, shall we say, a bit more relaxed when it comes to financial regulations.
Yeah.
But they got nailed for violating the U.S. Bank Secrecy Act. How about that?
Okay, now I know the Bank Secrecy Act is supposed to prevent money laundering. But how does that even apply to a crypto platform operating overseas? I mean, it feels like we're trying to apply horse and buggy laws to a spaceship.
Yeah. You're not wrong to point that out. You know, the Bank Secrecy Act has been around since 1970, long before Bitcoin. But here's the thing. U.S. regulators are basically saying if you're doing business with U.S. customers, those old laws, they still apply,
Okay.
even in this crazy new digital world. And that's the heart of it.
Right.
BitMEX was essentially saying welcome to U.S. customers with open arms. But at the same time, they kind of overlooked some very important compliance steps.
So they were trying to have their cake and eat it too, playing in the U.S. market
Yes.
while sidestepping U.S. rules. And what are we talking about here? The anti-money laundering and know your customer protocols,
Yep.
AML,
You got it.
and KYC.
Exactly. Those are like the golden rules.
Okay.
The financial world. And the U.S. government takes them very, very seriously.
Right.
AML, it's all about tracking transactions, flagging anything that looks suspicious,
Okay.
so they can prevent criminals from using the system to launder money. KYC is all about verifying who your customers actually are, making sure they're not using financial services for, bad stuff.
Okay, that makes sense. But it seems like they got away with this for quite a while, 5 years. From 2015 to 2020? Why do you think it took so long for the hammer to drop?
Well, think about it. Back in 2015, crypto was like the Wild West, completely unregulated. Regulators were just starting to wrap their heads around it, trying to figure out how existing laws could even apply to this new decentralized world. It's like they showed up to a jungle with a compass and a map, but it was completely uncharted.
So a bit of a regulatory blind spot, maybe even some intentional ambiguity on BitMEX's part. Testing the waters, seeing what they could get away with.
It's possible. And to be honest, this move fast and break things mentality, not unique to crypto at all.
Yeah.
Look at the early days of the internet. Everyone was pushing the limits. Regulators were scrambling to keep up. But in this case, with BitMEX, the music stopped.
Yeah.
And the U.S. government wasn't playing around.
Yeah, the Justice Department initially wanted to hit them with a $417 million fine.
Whoa.
That's almost $500 million.
That's serious.
What were they trying to prove with a penalty that big?
I think there are a few things going on there. First, they wanted to send a message, a really loud message to the entire crypto industry, that this kind of behavior, flouting the rules, it wouldn't be tolerated. Remember, BitMEX's was a big player.
Right.
And this, fine. It was like saying, we're watching.
Yeah.
The stakes are high. Second, I think the sheer size of that initial penalty really reflects how much illegal activity they believe BitMEX had facilitated.
So they weren't just slapping them on the wrist. They were making an example out of them. But ultimately, the fine was reduced to $100 million. What happened? Did BitMEX negotiate their way out of a bigger hit?
I'm sure there were a lot of legal things happening behind the scenes, things we don't know about. But I think part of it might be that BitMEX, after getting caught, they actually did start to implement those KYC and AML procedures that they were missing before. And of course, they spun it as a win. Said, look, see, the fine was reduced. We were right all along.
That's interesting. Doesn't it seem a bit disingenuous, though? Like, oh, now that we've been caught, we'll comply, and that makes everything okay. Almost like they're trying to rewrite history.
That's a really good point. It makes you wonder if they really understand how serious this was, or if they're just trying to save face. And this brings us to a bigger question. If a platform like BitMEX operating outside the U.S. can still be held accountable to U.S. regulations, what does that mean for all the other crypto companies around the world?
That's a great question, and one that I'm sure is on the minds of a lot of people in the crypto space right now. It feels like this case is setting a precedent.
It is.
A big one.
It really is. And it's not just about BitMEX. This is about the entire crypto industry.
Okay.
They're facing a lot more scrutiny as they grow.
Right.
And as they attract more attention from the mainstream.
Yeah.
Regulators around the world are starting to realize they can't just ignore this anymore.
It's kind of like the early days of the internet. where you had this initial period of like unfettered growth, and then the regulators came in and started setting up guardrails.
Precisely. And just like with the internet, the early days of crypto, there were definitely some bad actors taking advantage of the lack of clear rules. But the BitMEX's case, this is a sign that the free-for-all is coming to an end.
Okay, so if I'm running a crypto company right now, what's the takeaway? What do I need to do to avoid ending up in the same hot water as BitMEX?
Well, first and foremost, you need to take compliance very, very seriously. Put strong KYC and AML procedures in place.
Okay.
Make absolutely sure you are meeting all the regulatory requirements.
Yeah.
And be proactive. Talk to regulators. Don't wait for them to come to you.
So no more hiding in the shadows hoping no one notices. Transparency is key.
Absolutely. Crypto companies need to be open and honest about what they're doing.
Yeah.
They need to show they're committed to operating in a safe and compliant way.
And I imagine that building strong relationships with regulators is important too. Instead of seeing them as the enemy, it's more about working together to create a system that benefits everyone.
Exactly. Open communication, collaboration, that goes a long way in building trust and ensuring a smooth regulatory process.
You know, it's interesting to think about the timing of this ruling. Right as a new president is about to take office, is there any significance to that? Could this be a sign of a bigger shift in how the U.S. government is approaching crypto regulation?
You know, that's a sharp observation. The timing is definitely interesting. It's possible the outgoing administration wanted to make a statement about their commitment to cracking down on financial crimes in the crypto world.
Okay.
Or maybe they were trying to set a precedent for the incoming administration.
Either way, it seems like crypto regulation is going to be a hot topic in the next few years. But let's go back to BitMEX for a minute. They tried to spin the reduced fine as a win, but $100 million is still a lot of money. Do you think this penalty will actually deter other companies from trying to pull the same thing?
That's a tough question. It's hard to say for sure if it'll be enough to deter everyone. Some companies might be more motivated by avoiding reputational damage than they are by financial penalties.
Yeah, because once you get that bad reputation, it can be hard to shake. Investors might get spooked. Customers might lose trust.
Exactly. And in the long run, that damage to your reputation can cost you way more than any fine.
So it sounds like the message is pretty clear. Playing fast and loose with the rules is risky, and the consequences can be really significant. But what about companies that are genuinely trying to navigate this complex regulatory landscape? Are there any resources or guidance available to help them stay on the right side of the law?
There are more and more resources available all the time, thankfully. Industry groups, legal experts, even regulators themselves are starting to provide more clarity and guidance on all of this compliance stuff.
So it's becoming less about figuring things out in the dark and more about having a clear roadmap to follow.
That's the goal. But even with more guidance, it's still a tough environment. Crypto is a global industry.
Right.
And regulations are different everywhere you go. This creates a really complex web of legal and jurisdictional issues for these companies operating across borders.
It's like trying to navigate a maze where the walls are constantly moving.
That's a great way to put it. And it really highlights the need for international cooperation and harmonization of regulations. Otherwise, we risk creating a fragmented and inefficient system. And that would stifle innovation.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of compliance,
Yeah.
the challenges of a global regulatory landscape, and what this case might mean for the crypto industry as a whole. But let's not forget about the human element here.
Absolutely. This isn't just about abstract rules and legal precedents.
Right.
There are real people and real businesses affected by these events.
Exactly. And in the case of BitMEX, it wasn't just the company that was held accountable. Several individuals, the founders, were charged with crimes and faced legal consequences.
This really brings up the issue of individual responsibility.
Yeah.
Within these organizations, compliance isn't just a box you check.
Right.
It has to be part of the company culture.
Yeah.
Leaders need to set the tone and make it very clear that ethical behavior is non-negotiable.
It's about creating a culture of compliance where everyone understands the rules and everyone takes responsibility for their actions.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just avoiding legal trouble. It's about building trust and integrity. Those are essential for the health and sustainability of the entire industry in the long run.
So this case isn't just a cautionary tale. It's a call to action for everyone in the crypto world to step up and commit to operating in a responsible and ethical way.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's an opportunity for the industry to show the world that it can be a force for good, driving innovation while still upholding the highest standards of conduct.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on something we mentioned earlier, the role of technology in all of this. It seems like technology can be both a challenge and a solution when it comes to regulating crypto.
You're right, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, the decentralized and borderless nature of crypto makes it hard for regulators to keep track of everything
Right.
and enforce the rules. But on the other hand, technology can be a really powerful tool for improving compliance.
For example, we're seeing more and more use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to analyze transactions
Yes.
and flag suspicious activity.
Absolutely. These technologies can help both regulators and companies stay ahead of the bad guys, prevent financial crimes.
And we can't forget about the potential of blockchain technology itself.
Right. The foundation of all of this.
The very technology that underpins crypto can actually be used to increase transparency and accountability.
Exactly. Blockchain transactions are permanent and everyone can see them, which provides a very clear audit trail. And that's incredibly valuable for regulators who are trying to track illegal activities and hold bad actors accountable.
So in a way, blockchain technology can be used to regulate itself.
In a sense, yes. It has the potential to completely change compliance and create a much more transparent and accountable financial system. And this leads us to a really fascinating question. If regulators can harness the power of technology, can they create a regulatory framework that can keep up with the incredible speed of innovation we're seeing in the crypto space?
That's a great question, and one that I'm sure will be debated for years to come. It's a tough one for sure, but it seems like regulators are getting more serious about it. We're seeing a lot of new initiatives popping up focused on using technology to better oversee what's happening in the crypto world.
Definitely. And it's not just about governments and regulators either. The industry itself has to step up.
Yeah.
Be proactive and innovative when it comes to compliance. We're already seeing some cool things happening, like with decentralized identity verification
Oh, yeah.
and
yeah.
on-chain analytics.
Okay. So it's kind of like a race between the innovators and the regulators.
Yeah, I like that.
With technology as the playing field. But let's shift gears for a second and talk about something we haven't touched on yet. The average crypto user. What does all of this mean for them?
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
The BitMEX's case might seem like a distant thing,
Yeah.
something that only involves super sophisticated traders. But it actually has implications for everyone who's using crypto. More regulation could mean stricter KYC requirements on exchanges, more scrutiny of transactions, even new tax reporting rules.
So basically, everyone's going to have to get used to a more regulated world, even if they're just dipping their toes in the crypto waters.
It's starting to look that way.
Yeah.
The Wild West days are coming to an end,
Okay.
and that's probably a good thing. Overall,
Yeah.
more regulation can bring stability to the crypto world, make it seem more legitimate. And that could lead to wider adoption, more mainstream acceptance.
But doesn't that raise concerns about stifling innovation? I mean, one of the things that made crypto so exciting in the early days was that sense of freedom.
Yeah, I heard
It felt like you could operate outside the traditional financial system.
You're right. That's a valid concern. Regulators have to find the right balance. They need to protect people and prevent illegal activity, but they can't crush the creativity and innovation that makes crypto so unique.
It's like trying to tame a wild horse
Oh,
without breaking its spirit.
I like that.
You want to use its power, but you also want to let it run free.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great analogy. And it shows just how important it is for regulators, industry leaders, and the whole crypto community to work together. We need to find solutions that work for everybody.
Okay. So we've talked about the importance of compliance, the challenges of having regulations all over the world, and what this case could mean for the entire crypto industry.
Yeah.
But let's not forget about the human side of things.
Of course. This
Yeah.
isn't just about rules and legal stuff.
Right.
Real people are affected by this.
Right.
Real businesses.
Exactly. And in the BitMEX's case, it wasn't just the company itself that was held responsible. Several individuals were charged with crimes,
Right.
including the founders. They face legal consequences.
Yeah, that brings up another big issue. Individual responsibility within these organizations.
Right.
Compliance isn't just checking a box. It has to be part of the company's DNA.
Right.
Leaders have to set the example.
Yeah.
Make it absolutely clear that ethical behavior is the only option.
It's about creating a culture where everyone understands the rules
Yes.
and everyone takes responsibility for their actions.
Exactly. And it's more than just staying out of trouble. It's about building trust and integrity.
Yeah.
And those things are absolutely crucial for the long-term success of the entire industry.
So this case, it's not just a warning. It's a wake-up call for the entire crypto world. A call to be more responsible, more ethical in everything they do.
Couldn't agree more. It's a chance for the industry to show that it can do good in the world,
Yeah.
drive innovation, and still operate with the highest standards.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to something we talked about before, the role of technology.
Right?
It's a powerful force, and it can be both a help and a hindrance when it comes to regulating crypto.
That's true. On the one hand, crypto is decentralized, no borders, hard for regulators to keep up.
Right.
But on the other hand, technology can be a huge asset for compliance.
For example, we're seeing the rise of things like artificial intelligence and machine learning to analyze transactions
Oh yeah, it's everywhere now.
and flag any red flags.
Absolutely. Those technologies can help both sides. The regulators and the companies keep ahead of the bad actors, prevent financial crimes,
And then there's blockchain itself.
a foundation of it all.
Right. The very technology that makes crypto possible can also be used to make things more transparent, more accountable.
Exactly. Blockchain transactions, they're permanent.
Okay.
Everyone can see them. It's like a perfect audit trail.
Hmm.
So helpful for regulators who are trying to track illegal activities
Yeah.
and make sure the bad guys are held responsible.
So blockchain is almost like it can regulate itself in a way.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
It has the power to completely revolutionize compliance, create a financial system that is so much more transparent and accountable. And that leads us to a really interesting question. If regulators can use technology to their advantage, can they create a system that can actually keep up with all the innovation that's happening in the crypto world?
That's a great question, and I think it's one that will be debated for a long time.
Definitely. A lot to think about.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. But I think regulators are starting to understand how important this is. We're seeing more and more of these initiatives focused on using technology to improve how they watch over the crypto space.
Absolutely. And it's not just the responsibility of governments and regulators. The crypto industry itself needs to be proactive. They need to be coming up with creative solutions when it comes to compliance. We're already seeing some cool things happening in areas like decentralized identity verification and on-chain analytics.
Yeah, those are really interesting areas. But you know what? Let's talk about something we haven't really discussed yet. What about the average crypto user? What does all of this mean for them?
That's a really important point. While the BitMEX's case might seem far removed from everyday users, something that involves a complicated trading platform, it actually has implications for anyone who interacts with crypto at all. Increased regulation could mean stricter. No. Your customer requirements on exchanges, more scrutiny of transactions, potentially even new tax reporting obligations.
So basically, everyone's going to have to get used to a more regulated crypto world, even if they're just buying a little Bitcoin here and there.
It's definitely heading in that direction.
Yeah.
The days of the Wild West are fading. And you know what? That's probably a good thing in the long run.
Okay.
Increased regulation can bring more stability to the crypto space. It can make it seem more legitimate, and that could lead to wider adoption and more mainstream acceptance.
That makes sense. But doesn't that also raise concerns about stifling innovation? One of the things that made crypto so exciting in the early days was this feeling of freedom, this idea that you could operate outside the traditional financial system.
Yeah, that was a big part of the appeal.
Yeah.
And it's a valid concern. Regulators have to find that sweet spot. They need to protect consumers and prevent illegal activities.
Mm-hmm.
But they can't do it in a way that crushes the creativity and innovation that makes crypto so unique.
Right. It's like trying to tame a wild horse without breaking its spirit. You want to harness its power, but you still want to let it run free.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy. It highlights how important collaboration and dialogue are. We need regulators, industry leaders, and the crypto community all working together to find solutions that work for everyone.
Well said. So we've covered a lot today, from the specifics of the BitMEX case to the bigger picture of crypto regulation and what it all means for everyday users. As we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the crypto world is changing fast, and regulation is a major force shaping its future. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting to dip your toes into crypto, it's crucial to stay informed about the evolving regulatory environment and understand how it might impact you.
Absolutely. And it's not just about following the rules. It's about being part of a responsible and ethical ecosystem. The choices we make today will determine the future of crypto. And it's up to all of us to make sure that it's a future we can be proud of.
Very well said. It's been great joining you for this deep dive. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, the pleasure was all mine. And to our listeners, thanks for diving in with us. Keep exploring, stay curious, and until next time, happy crypto adventures.